Okay, thank you very much. I was asked to talk about our view, the view of a research institute that works on packaging and process engineering, in reality to work on packaging development, on packaging materials, on analytics, and also on recycling technologies. What do we expect from the PPWR? And when I asked my analytical people, they said, nothing happens. We will do the same as we did before, because we make migration studies of the material, irrespective of whether it's a virgin material or is recycled material, because the rules for both types of materials are the same. Okay, this is not very fruitful, because this is only a small part of the reality. The reality is, what can we do on all levels of technology, not only on analytics? On analytics, this may be true, but the consequences are different. The consequences are not, okay, we have a material that is acceptable, or we have a material that's not acceptable, but we have the consequence that the recycling technologies themselves have to be improved to make the material acceptable. But this is another part of the story. However, so I will talk a little bit about some facts for recycling of plastic packaging. I will also take about the areas where we will be working on and which will be important regarding the PPWR, and some conclusions in the end. By the way, a part of the presentation I will give and a part of the research areas already make a part of a later presentation dealing with what happens in the future. So to say, so this is already a part of that, what comes later from our side. Okay, so when we look at recycling of plastics, we have two ways given by the Plastics Recycling Directive. You either have some release of the EFSA for a proven technology, which is an authorization, or you have the consent for a new technology. And this new technology can be tested over a period of 5 years. And then it has to be finally evaluated. So someone investing into a new technology may have the problem that after 5 years of testing, he fails and his whole investment is gone. This is something that's really severe, but okay, investing into technologies and entrepreneurial actions are always risky. So we have the same, there's no trend to change the regulation for food contact materials. Therefore, our analytical people are right. For them, there's no big change. But if we look, and this was also an outcome of the question we had some minutes before, what happens if we have an increase in recycled content with other polymers than PET, which is an effect if you look into the PPWR. Then the rules of the EFSA as they are today and the technology we have as it is today do not fit. So with the present technology on recycling of HDPE, for instance, or of polypropylene, there is little chance that the EFSA will finally give it an authorization for technology. So we have a problem. Okay, and as a research guy, I can say, okay, if we have a problem, that's fine for us. We have to solve the problem. okay, we are still optimistic that this can really be done. On the other hand, for the industry, they have the problem that if someone else has to solve their problems or a part of their problems, they have to rely on someone else, and it creates an uncertainty. But this is something we cannot solve from our point of view. So this is, let's say, my view on the whole material cycle with recycled polymers. So, and the areas where we will be doing activities in the future. So we have the material circle up to packagings. We have the application of packagings in different areas. This is important to know which area, because the release criteria also depend on the type of application. You cannot get a general release of a polymer only for a certain application. Therefore, for instance, if you get a release for use of a recycled polymer for containers, for a liquid beverage that is not be heated, for adults, that does not mean that you can use the same material for infants. This is according to the rules of the EFSA. Therefore, you always have to be very specific when talking about application and the release. All right, when you have your material and you would like to recycle it, we have the recycling circuit going up there, but we also have the chance to use the material in reuse systems. And Dorota was asking me, what are you doing in reuse? And I was first saying our efforts there are very limited because not many people are using reuse plastic articles, which have also severe problems. But I was corrected from my scientists. They said, especially in terms of conformity for repeated reuse, this will be something new. And the effort we will have will depend on how much of this material is used in reuse applications. On the other hand, hygienic aspects of refilling are important. If you do not talk about beverages and automatic filling lines with returnable systems, this is easy because this exists. But what happens with a meat tray in a store? Do you have automatic cleaning systems that avoid that a contaminated tray comes into a circle? No, we don't have this. So also this, but this is perhaps from my view a little bit far apart. So we have thought about this, but this is more an option than a reality. On the other hand, if we look at the recycling circle, we are already working on that. We made a lot of dossiers and petitions for PET recycling. We are right now working on other materials as well, with mixed success for these materials. So we still can say that the recycling processes themselves need development. And this is why we are doing something there. And we are also evaluating those processes. Okay, and then when the recyclates and the virgin raw materials come together in materials with recycled contents, we also have to evaluate those materials analytically. So also there we have to supply dossiers and petitions. But also the question is, how about recycled content? do we have an analytical method for an individual package to quantify recycled content? The answer is nobody knows. So this remains an open problem, how to quantify recycled content. But I cannot say, there's no one in my group here in my institute who is saying, yes, we have a good method. We don't. But I think others have the same problem. But then when it comes to the design of the packagings, Dorota talked about functional barrier. Yes, functional barrier has to be into both sides. It has to be, on the one hand side, if you have a flexible material, it has to be in the direction of the product. And on the other side, it has to be in the direction of the rear side and the contact to the next side of the package. You usually have the packaging on a roll. And if you have a contaminated packaging that has a barrier in one direction, the contamination may go into the other direction and contaminate the packaging material via the rear side, the so-called set-off. We have to find a technical solution also for this. So the design of packagings will be an increasing factor for us to make a functional evaluation of the designed packagings, especially so-called monolayer packagings, which in fact consist of several layers with barrier layers in between. The performance of the packagings must be the same as before, because otherwise we will reduce the shelf life and increase the food losses. So we also need to think about shelf life evaluation. So this is, in brief words, my view onto the whole effects of the PPWR. So, okay, I added for your information the way we look at the recycling structures, and a recycling process in our view is not only the whole process, but in fact it consists of at least two different areas. One is selection and preparation of the material to be recycled, meaning we need to separate food and non-food packagings, for instance. Then we need to separate according to the materials and so on. There's a lot of development going on in this area. But then if we once have the processing of the polymer, we need to apply decontamination processes. And there's also a lot of things that can be done, either degassing, post-treatment, like, what do you call it? Forgot the word at the moment, sorry, but post-treatment, thermal post-treatment to get a reconfiguration of the solid phase condensation. Yeah, but this only works for polycondensates. It does not work for the polyolefins. Therefore, this is one of the major advantages of PET, and a big disadvantage for most of the other polymers. But this has to be followed, and yes, there's a lot of people working on that. We as well, but we are not the major player in this area. Good, so I summarized that what I said before. The research and development tasks that follow the requirements of the PPWR is we need to have, besides our analytical tests, also something that is more tricky than you think. The EFSA says we have a maximum amount of carcinogenic, toxic, or or reproduction or mutagenic substances, CMR substances. How can you analytically verify this? At the moment, nobody knows. Only because you don't know the substances exactly. But there's people making, let's say, a cell test, so-called Ames test, but this only tells you there are some substances present or they are below a certain level. Okay, but if there are some substances present, this doesn't help you because you do not know how to remove them. Therefore, we need a rapid test on the one hand side, and we need a better way for identification of them. Both needs to be together. And in addition to that, we need to identify critical components for packaging design. You know, for instance, one example, which is nitrocellulose as a lacquer component. It creates nitrosamines upon recycling the thermal processes. So, but there will be many other examples like this, and you must identify them. In materials development, we have to look for the correct structures to avoid barrier losses in both areas, one in the functional area, the other in the contamination area. We have to improve the recycling process, and we also have to think about returnable systems. However, I think that this will be, let's say, much less than the rest of the activities. So that's it. Conclusions. We have very high requirements and safety levels. Regulatory handling is to be improved, but also the technology is to be improved. That's all. Thank you very much.